With most investors going about life, investing, and retirement planning as if nothing unusual has happened to our financial system, not realizing the repercussions of the 11 trillion that's been pumped into the US financial system in the past 18 months alone. I just want to share with you a report we have just put out. At least 4 billionaires have stated publicly that Americans aren't paying enough attention to this development. And now a former Goldman Sachs banker says sooner than most people think, millions of Americans will potentially be pushed down out of the middle class, out of private retirement, and out of a decent life based on independence and privacy into a collectivist nightmare he calls financial lockdown. So find out how to protect yourself, your money, and your family with a free copy of his new report. In it, he'll show you the 4 steps he recommends that you take immediately. So if you'd like a free copy of the report, you simply have to go to 2022wakeupcall.com. Again, that's 2022wakeupcall.com. Headline after headline, there is a lot of confusion out there. So how does one navigate the crisis? And what should you own if the mortars keep falling? Joining me today is E.B. Tucker, author of Why Gold, Why Now? E.B., always good to be with you.
Thanks for having me.
We have a lot of ground to cover today. We know you have an exciting new project you're working on. We're going to get to that. You want to stay tuned to hear what he's doing. But first, big picture here. The NASDAQ is in really bad shape. Despite for some, movements up here and there, big picture, it's not in a good place. Tech stocks plummeted. What is one to do here? What should you own?
It's probably going to get worse, by the way. You figure you go back to 2010, 11 in that area. I mean, tech stocks have rallied 1,000%, while resource stocks have gone down the whole time. So people in the gold royalty business, like myself, and copper royalty with Nova Royalty, we barely knew there was a problem the last few weeks, because this is the time where we shine. I mean, everything is changing. So what you're seeing is the big shift. And I'm hearing from all these people I know that are conventional people, they're not sure what to do. What do we do? What's happening next? I don't know what to do. I own these stocks. They're down 50%. The NASDAQ itself's not quite down that much. What is happening here? And what you're seeing is this is a change in the trend. This is what it looks like when things are changing. We're just coming off of this huge deflationary tech stock rally where interest rates went down, down, down. There was no volatility. They lulled you to sleep. I mean, if you're 35 years old and you work in finance, you've only known a tech stock rally, which is really crazy to think about. And so as that changed, people are in disbelief. That's the first stage of dealing with a grief situation, is disbelief, so there's more stages to come.
And one thing that you've said is if you have cash in the bank, you're just getting poorer. What do you make of the inflationary?
Yeah, think about this. It's crazy. I mean, you're let's say you have cash at 0.5%. I have a Goldman Sachs high yield savings account. It's 0.5%. So that's considered high yield. But inflation is clocking in this morning at 7.5%, which I don't think is accurate, because I filled up one of my several cars last night and the gas is $5.50 a gallon in Florida, which is not a place that usually gas is so excessively high. And so they don't count that in the inflation number. So everybody knows it's about 10%. That's the number you're seeing big guys like Gunlock come out and say. So you're losing 9.5%. If you have 100 grand in the bank, it only buys you 90,000 worth of stuff next year. That's really tough to deal with.
So let's talk about energy prices through the roof, wheat prices through the roof, talks of countries hoarding food. What does the world situation look like right now? What's next?
All right, so you've got to get a couple of the big picture things right. I mean, you got to remember that 2008, when oil hit 140 or so in the last bull run, the oil stocks were the biggest component of the S&P. And now they're the smallest component because they're uninvestable. If you manage money, you're not allowed to invest in Chevron or ConocoPhillips or the great oil companies, because it's like tobacco stocks. You can't do that because they're terrible. They're polluters. They're going to ruin the earth. And you have to invest in things that are virtuous. That have a good ESG rating. So therefore, there's no money going into the oil business. And people need to understand that. You've demonized this investment. So as the price goes higher, there's no new supply to come on the market in the US, right? The supply is going down. Then you have to look at something very important. In 2019, I gave a speech in London about globalization is over and the world is going to cordon off into zones. Okay. And what that means is that you're having, from a world market that we've been used to the last 20 years, we're going down to a market of zones where the US is not buying Russian oil. You see the news this week, no more Russian oil. Well, people say, well, what do we need Russian oil for? Well, I hate to tell you, but it's 3 to 6% of daily supply, depending on the numbers you look at. There's a lot of oil that comes out of Russia. I mean, it's one of the top producers in the world. The U.S., Saudi Arabia are around 10. Russia's somewhere around half that. It's a big, big, big number, and we're not going to buy any of it. So you have $120 oil and $5 or $6 gas. Pierre Lassane said $10 gas. People thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
We're over halfway there.
Okay, and that's a good point. To sum up, we're basically on the cusp of a major energy transition. So what's next? What's the next phase?
Well, so as you know, we got involved in the electric vehicle transition by providing the metals that go into these cars. Now, 15 years ago, if I told you cars are going to run on batteries, you would have laughed at me and you would have said, I lost my mind. And then a couple years later, if you had said, okay, I'm understanding that you're right, what do I buy? We could have told you. We were looking at this business, but now everyone knows this. Now everyone knows that cars are transitioning to electric, and this is the path forward. But what they don't know is that net zero. Everybody's heard about net zero. All these companies, Pepsi, all these big companies, they come out and say we want to reduce our carbon footprint, and a lot of people have promised to be net zero by 2030. What that means is they're not going to emit carbon in the course of doing their business. Now, this is very important. The average person at their barbecue with their friends says that's a ridiculous idea, just like they did when electric vehicles were new. They said that's a crazy idea. I'm always going to have my Dodge truck, and I'm never going to have anything different. So what you're seeing here is this net zero economy is emerging. Now, how are people going to get there? Well, we figured it out. Okay. They cannot reduce their carbon footprint to zero because ultimately, Pepsi can't make a bottle of soda, without emitting some carbon. I mean, it's almost impossible. You just can't do it. So once you reduce your carbon footprint to a certain level, you have to buy the right to emit the rest of the carbon. And what that means is that I can't get my carbon all the way down, so someone else has done it for me, and I'm going to pay for that right. And that's the business that we found works extremely well with the business that we're good at, which is royalties. And so we figured out how to take that royalty business and put it on top of this carbon business to net zero. And if you think it's crazy, you better at least look twice because it's going to zoom right by you if you don't.
Okay, so hold on. There's 2 points there. Hold on to the carbon credit thought. First, nickel. We saw nickel, rocket higher. Why didn't Nova Royalty respond to that rise?
So I think Nova Royalty is still a story that people don't understand. We're following the Metalla path where you'll see Nova go up to the New York Stock Exchange. And Metalla was once an unknown story. I mean, that was one where you tell people, they say, never heard of it. It's trading in Toronto. As it migrates down to the US, it'll become more popular. But Nova saw early that this was going to be the metal that was necessary and secured royalties on these projects. And as I was saying with the zones, Russia produces a lot of nickel. Indonesia produces a lot of nickel. The Chinese are taking the Indonesian nickel and the Russians are keeping their nickel. So what does that leave you with? Everybody in the US wants a Cybertruck. They don't realize that there's a tremendous amount of nickel that goes into the battery packs of that truck. Where are you going to get it? Well, we know where you're going to get it, and we have a royalty. So with Nova, what you're going to see is people are going to wake up to the fact that you can't transition without these metals, and it's better to own a royalty than to own a big mine with a bunch of protesters out front.
Okay, so now you're going to have a carbon neutral LTD, a carbon credit royalty. First, carbon credits also got crushed during the Ukraine-Russia crisis here. Sure. They didn't escape either, right?
Sure, but I haven't seen one major corporation or nation come out and say, because of the Ukraine situation, we're now no longer going to be net zero. In fact, right. I've seen them say this is more important than ever that we be net zero because the energy crisis is showing us that we have to be net zero. So to your point, you have the credits are down. We're using that opportunity to build a powerhouse company.
Okay. I want everyone at home to follow along because this can get complicated. But if we have to water it down, right? If companies are expected to be net zero by 2030, they have this mandate. How does it come back to the individual? Why will I be taxed?
Okay. So the basics of this are everybody's accepted that carbon's bad. I mean, you can go into any coffee shop and ask the barista, is carbon good or
Yeah,
bad? And they'll say it's terrible. It's going to kill the world.
right.
Okay, so everybody's bought into this. And so now you measure your carbon footprint. So there's companies out there, we're partnered with them. They're helping major corporations measure their carbon footprint. Now, try to check your opinions at the door and don't think about your perception of carbon. Let me just tell you, EB knows that these
Right.
companies are doing this right now. So,
And I'm happy you're saying that because the last time I talked carbon credits, I can't tell you the amount of nasty
yeah,
comments. So you're
yeah,
not turning into a hippie. So
yeah,
please
right.
continue.
Right. So these companies, these major corporations, all the products in your home, all these companies want to be net zero. They hire someone to figure out how to reduce their carbon footprint. Now, what that means is, okay, let's say they put out 100,000 tons of carbon arbitrarily. They lower it down to 80 by putting solar panels on. They lower it down to 60 by not using the air conditioner or something. I don't know. They get it all the way down to 20 and they say, we're down to 20, can't do any more. And so this advisory group says, we have a company that's secured 20,000 tons of carbon credits from a beautiful mangrove plantation in Southeast Asia, and these have been certified, and you can buy these. We monitor these. They're very real, and this offsets your balance of your carbon output so that your company is net zero carbon. Now, companies have all promised to do this, and your question is, what about the individual? And I'll tell you what's going to happen is that eventually I think carbon will be used as a tax on the individual. And what this means is once all the companies are net zero, they're very virtuous, they're very clean, everything they do is eco-friendly. They're going to say to the individual, they're going to say, now, EB Tucker, you have too many cars, okay? You have all these cars and you have too many square feet of roof over your head, and your carbon footprint is huge. And so you're going to have to pay. You got to pay to offset your carbon footprint. Or you could get rid of the cars and get rid of the house and get rid of everything and live like a peasant, and then you have no carbon footprint.
Ah, aha. And those at home may be asking, well, how will they know what I'm doing and how I own all these things? Enter the
Easy.
digital dollar.
Easy, because everything you buy will go from your Fedcoin. So
Exactly. Yeah.
right now, $10,000 is the limit to how much money you can travel around with, and it's been the limit for 35 years or so. And let me tell you, $10,000 is nothing. I mean, if you fly over to Geneva and you spend 2 nights in a nice hotel, couple dinners, and a day of skiing, you've blown through the whole 10,000. So it's absolutely not an amount of money that amounts to anything. So you're already here. I mean, lunch in any major town in America for two is $100. Okay, so the money has already slowly been digitized as we speak. You cannot move money around without going through the Fed system. And next, the Fed's going to say, okay, but this crypto is revolutionary, and we're going to use the backbone of crypto to implement Fedcoin, which is going to be so great because you'll never be able to not pay taxes again. You know, by the way, eBay, someone told me the other day, eBay, if you sell your old iPhone for more than $600, eBay sends you a 1099 as of January 1, and PayPal and Venmo and Zelle send you 1099s, okay? And the person telling me this said, can you believe it? And I said, not only can I believe it, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is going to be every single dollar that moves. They're going to track that, and you're going to pay.
And the question is it unstoppable at this point? We see the
Yes.
executive order coming from President Biden. We see the notes. If you read the Fed meeting, it is in there that they are looking at this, and it may be coming sooner than we think. But is it unstoppable?
Yes. And when they tell you it's being thought about, it's already been done. Okay. Believe me, these people are not concerned about your individual liberty. They say, why would you want to hide anything? Do you have something to hide? You know, are you up to something? Okay, why don't you want us to see what you're doing? And
Yeah.
everybody needs to understand. You have this crypto boom. Everybody's enamored with crypto. Okay, for years and years I've said this, and I wrote it in a book, and I wrote it in
Yeah.
Doug Casey's newsletter. Is that the crypto boom has nothing to do with Fedcoin? Okay, because you have a bunch of pancake coin and you think that you're going to be rich because it's going to be worth tons of money, that's different from what's happening with Fedcoin. That's not going to have anything to do with pancake coin, okay? This is going to be something that's a closed loop blockchain that the Fed controls, and it will track and trace every single dollar. You know, look at your dollar, serial number on the dollar, okay? That's going to be listed on a blockchain. You ever play liar's poker with money? All those serial numbers, like that, they already have the serial numbers. It'll just be digitized on a blockchain, and every dollar will be tracked. So back to your original question. So EB Tucker goes and buys another car, and the Fedcoin doesn't work, and they say, well, you have too many vehicles. How many people do you have in your house? It's too many. Or you have to pay an extra fee. Would you like to have more than one vehicle? You got to pay a fee to have more than one vehicle. How many square feet is your house? Mine's very small, actually. I'm a small house person. I like to live in a small one-story, architecturally cool place. But many people like to live in a gigantic home with columns and chandeliers and gaudy fixtures everywhere. And those people are going to pay through the nose because they're going to say, you don't need 7,000 square feet for 3 people. And all this is trackable, traceable. It's right on the horizon, and there's no way you can stop it.
Let's say the day that it comes, right? Is there a workaround around? I don't want to use the Fedcoin. What else can I use?
You can get yourself a vertical farm in your living room and try to survive without using the Fedcoin. But good luck to you. My suggestion is, number one, is if you have why gold, why now? I mean, first of all, if you haven't read that, I mean, I think you're really missing out, but it's not too late, okay? Because I explain two things. I mean, one, I lay this whole path out, and you can see that it's all coming true as promised. And then two, why don't you make some money off of it? Because a little extra walking around cash is going to help you deal with transition pretty well. Imagine when your friends were laughing at Tesla, if you had gone home and look at Elon Musk. I mean, all his stock options he's exercising, he's up 1,000% or better because he positioned early. So instead of laughing at the greenies that are driving the electric vehicles, if you had said, wait a minute, these guys are onto something. I mean, we're not going to use oil. We're not going to buy it from the same people that we used to buy it from. We're going to use battery powered everything and renewable powered everything. And maybe I should learn about this before it's too late. Those people, they have a name for them. You know what they call them? Millionaires.
Let's talk gold, because I'm just wondering, as you're saying that, if you are looking to get into some hard assets, are you better off entering it now than when the Fedcoin comes along?
It's dirt cheap, and eventually they're going to make it where you can't buy it. I mean, you already see these news stories coming out. The Russians, they have all these 75 million ounces of gold. I bet you they have way more than that. Oh, they're going to evade sanctions with gold. Therefore, gold is bad. Therefore, if you like gold, you like Russia. You see how this is building up already. So they're going to do this. It's going to happen. And I have 3 gold dealers in my book. Call any of those gold dealers and tell them that you want a bunch of coins. And they're going to say, I know you're friends with EB, you read his book, but I got to tell you something, guys. There's not a lot of gold right now. So you have to pay a lot of money. What does that tell you? You got to pay this amount to get an actual coin, and you got to pay this amount in the market. Okay, so there's a big problem. Now, personally, this is just me. I like the royalty business because as this becomes reality, I get decades of future gold production valued today. And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see the royalty companies, not just my company, but the whole business of royalties is going to get incredibly interesting the second half of this year. I think these companies have irreplaceable assets. There's a lot of takeovers going on. If you look, there's been 5 takeovers in the last year in this business. It's not getting any headlines. And these companies are struggling to find new deals. The deals they own are undervalued, and people are buying these companies. And so I think the thing to do, the coins are one thing, okay, but there's a limit to how many coins you need, so the royalties are a way to leverage the future, which I think is going to be a no gold future. Why would the central bank want you to have gold? There's no reason for you to have gold, because then they can't control you. It's a huge problem.
Is that what you mean when you say that gold is under assault?
It's like it's coming from every angle. I mean, if you look at the futures market, you have half a year of gold production sold short in one day when gold breaks over 2,000. That's crazy. Who's doing that? Okay, you have that angle going on. Then you have from the angle of Russia. They say, well, Russia has all the gold. They're terrible. If you have gold, you're with Russia. You see, you're seeing you never seeing people say that about Bitcoin. They'll never say about Bitcoin, well, the hackers have Bitcoin, so if you have Bitcoin, you're a hacker. They never say that. It's a whole page of positive Bitcoin. It's going to change the world. Got to get some. Got to get all the coins. The coins are coming back. Here's the price prediction. You never see that on gold. So there's a reason they don't want you to have gold.
Aren't you just tired of all the noise, EB?
Well, most of the time, I don't have a television, so I don't have any noise on whatsoever. But once you've done this long enough, it's very easy to see through the clutter. Because if you remember something, everybody out there watching, knows this. Everybody was really upset about Me Too. Everybody was really upset about everybody's life matters. And then you're really upset about all these different movements. And then the COVID. You're at the Whole Foods and somebody's yelling at you about COVID. You get your mask over your nose, and that's all done. Now I went to a Russian restaurant with my kids because I wanted them to eat the Russian food last weekend. They have a giant Ukraine flag. I'm laughing because I'm saying I've been to all these places. It's very funny to see all this because you would never normally see this. It's
Well,
just
because they're getting attacked. I just,
they're getting
they're
attacked.
getting attacked,
They have to
right?
show that they're virtuous. And
Yes.
if you've been to Ukraine and you've been to Russia and you've done business there, you know that it's a very complicated relationship. And it would be very rare to see a Russian restaurant in Moscow with a big Ukraine flag out front. So anyway, my point is, you said to me, do I get tired of the noise? You have to understand that from my perspective, after 20 years of noise, I'm like a person. You ever spend time with your grandparents and they don't really listen to each other? They have it's almost like they have a natural way to tune each other out. That's how I feel, because when I look at this situation, I say, a couple of weeks from now, you'll forget all about this and you'll be upset about the next thing they tell you to be upset about. And so once that goes on for a long time and you can see that, you just tune it out and you try to look for the facts. And the way the facts line up right now is that there's a very small amount of people that are about to make a huge amount of money, okay? And there's a very large amount of people that are somewhat slowly losing most of their money.
Well, if there is transactional wealth happening, and a lot of folks might not know what to do with that wealth.
Well, right. I mean, that's a whole other story. But when you look, I was just with some friends last weekend trying. They want to know about what's going on in the royalty business, and I explained to them, listen, the gold price goes up $100, $200, $300. The value of 30 years of gold production goes up drastically. And then you look at what's going on with carbon. It's so new, right? So we've already done the work. So we were busy last year building this carbon company, and now we're about to come out to the market, right? And people say, well, that's some hippie stuff right there, but it's not. This is what's going on now, and you're going to see more and more and more of this going on, and people that get involved are going to be ahead of the curve.
So, so 2 points. You were calling for gold to go above 2,000 an ounce. We got there, but investors want higher gold, and they're saying, given everything that's happening, shouldn't it be higher? EB, why isn't it higher?
I'm stunned. I mean, look at so the nickel market is not the same as the gold market. You don't have all this paper trading in the nickel market. It's very thin. And so the nickel market broke down and ran to about 400% in a matter of days. And there was one Chinese guy that had been shorting. Now, it's no coincidence that the Chinese own the LME. So you can kind of take that information for what it's worth. But this guy had been shorting the entire time. And he said today on Bloomberg he wants to short more. So you have the same thing with the gold market. Who are these people shorting? We've always accused them of this and they call us crazy. But these people are out there doing this. So I don't know when the gold market does what the nickel market did. But I can tell you something. When it does what the nickel market did, which is it backs all the shorters into a corner and makes them settle with physical gold, they're going to shut the market down. See, the nickel market is still closed. This is like you ever go to a casino? At the casino, you're allowed to gamble as much as you want until you win a lot, and then you're thrown out. So
you're saying they're going to shut the gold market down.
So if the gold market does what the nickel market did, like the nickel market, the guy was backed into a corner and didn't have the nickel and had excessively shorted the nickel market. And so the price shot up 400% and they closed the market down and they canceled the trades that were going on as that went up. And what I'm saying to you is that the gold to back the trades that you see in the futures market physically does not exist. It absolutely does not exist, which means that these are just financial contracts that track the gold price. They have nothing to do with gold. So as this progresses, you just said to me, people want the gold price to go up. I understand why, because it makes absolutely no sense that the gold price is not much, much higher. Okay. So if the gold market gets into a situation like the nickel market, where people are backed into a corner, there's not enough gold to cover all these short positions, believe me, the same thing would happen that happened in the nickel market. They shut the thing down. Think about it. Nickel's been frozen all week. The market has been frozen all week. If you had a trade, it's frozen and it's canceled. And people say, don't you love free markets? I mean, they're free as long as you're losing. As soon as you start winning, they're no longer free.
You've also been saying for the longest time, the Fed is not going to raise rates. And this is before Ukraine, Russia. You were saying it. It's not
Yep.
going to happen.
Yep.
Now, more so than ever, I would think.
Maybe 1/4 of a point or something. But one of my close friends that tracks this said to get back to the proper metric, they'd have to raise 40 times. Because there used to be this thing called the Taylor rule, and if they were to get back to the Taylor rule, which was 20 years ago, they'd have to have 40 rate hikes. Not going to happen. I mean, if they even have more than 1/4 point rate hike, the whole system will freeze up. I mean, you can forget about it. This thing is leveraged to the max, and it's got to stay that way. So they have to keep rates down. And then even if rates go up a teeny tiny bit, inflation is so high that the average person has no idea that they're losing close to 10% per year. This is a bad scenario for individuals, really bad, because they say, well, EB, that's too complicated. Oh, I'm just not smart enough to understand that. Well, I'll tell you what, you are smart enough to understand that. Go to the Whole Foods, buy yourself some groceries. You know how to do that?
We're going to go together.
Yeah, we're going to go together. We're going to go crazy in there. And you're going to see, if you want to eat a real meal that's actual seafood caught with a pole and vegetables grown on a tree without a bunch of modifications, it's really expensive. It's really expensive, and it's going to get more expensive.
Yep. And I was thinking of you last night. I knew you were coming on, and this is probably a bigger subject for another time. But it's interesting how money has evolved, right? Like, from our parents' generation to today's generation, how it really almost means nothing, right? Especially to this new generation. You give them $10, you give them $20, give them $100. It's like, whatever. It's almost like there's no concept of money.
Well, back when I was a kid, it was cut the yard and you get your $5, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you come in there, you're like
deal.
covered in dirt, and it's, can I have the $5? And I'm definitely not going to lose it. That's for sure.
Exactly.
But nowadays, yeah, you're right. It's very trivial. And so I think there's a reckoning that comes at some point. But for the individual watching, okay, this is the thing that everybody's got to understand, all right? A lot of people missed out on Metallo. They didn't know what we were doing. I told them what we were doing. I gave talks about this at conferences. I told everyone I'd sit on an airplane, I'd tell someone next to me about Metallo. They wouldn't listen. Okay, so we did that. We went from $1.20 Canadian to 16, okay, and the company's still growing. Then we did Nova, and people missed out on that because they said, I'm not a hippie, so I'm not going to invest in the components of electric batteries for electric cars, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, great. So that came out 25 cents, 50 cents, all the way to $6. Again, the company is still growing, it has irreplaceable assets. And now we're doing carbon offset royalty, carbon neutral. I mean, we're doing that next week. I mean, you can go to the website, carbonneutralltd.com, and you can go in there and send an email and say, I'd like to be notified what the company's up to. If you live in Canada, you can call your broker and you can say, give me the details. This is happening now. This is the pre-listing fundraising, and Brett and I, my partner Brett Heath, who I know you've met before, have done. You missed Metallo, you missed Nova. Don't miss this. I mean,
right.
Look,
Well,
you can say what you want. If maybe we're going to be hippies and come back with a nose ring, it's possible. But the point is that you should see by now what we're up to. We have a business that we know works, and we know how to build it.
So if you follow the money, right? There's a lot of money and folks going and to carbon credits. We're going to see so many companies popping up left, right, and center, carbon credits. All the money in Vancouver's headed in that direction.
Yeah, good luck to them, because it's not easy. Let me just tell you, I'm going to make this really simple. Not all carbon credits are the same, okay? If you think you're going to go plant a bunch of trees, all right, because trees grow up and then you have to saw them down and all the carbon goes back into the air. This is a very low value thing to do. And all this Vancouver money is hoping to go out there and quickly find some tree farms they could do and get some credits going and have a nice website and put out a bunch of press releases and get people all distracted. We've done something totally different. We realize that blue carbon is the tenderloin of the carbon business. I mean, this is Bitcoin compared to pancake coin, okay? This blue carbon, where ocean meets land, think mangroves, seagrass, salt marsh, traps carbon at a rate of 10-to-1 over trees and holds it forever. You never cut a mangrove tree down to make a table or something. You just don't do that. It sits there and protects the ecosystem of the coast. And so we focused all of our energy on partnering with developers that do this already. And we're done. Believe me, we're done. This is not like we're going to go do it we've been doing it quietly for the last 7 months, 8 months, and we are way ahead of these people. And so when you see what the guys that did Metalla, the guys that did Nova are doing in the carbon business, this is really a
Okay.
unique time to focus.
And I wish you luck with it and all you do, EB. I want you to bring it home for us now. Not talking deals, not talking royalties, really talking about the issue at hand, because you always do give good advice. I mean, ever since I've spoken to you, I'm much more aware of not being on my cell phone when I'm walking down the street, but I do notice everyone else completely like a robot, and they're bumping into you, and
they don't know what's
running
going
over
on.
bikes.
I mean,
They don't know what's going on.
and then they'll, you know what they'll tell you? They'll say, "Gosh, I just can't meet anybody." And you say, "Well, I know, but unless you meet them on your phone, you're not going to ever meet them.
Yeah,
You don't know what's going on." So look,
but
people,
since our
this is
talks,
consciousness is human consciousness is under attack. Okay, so if you want to do something, if you want to do a favor for your kids, okay, everybody always asks me what you do for your kids. Okay, the number one thing you can do for your kids is be present as a person. So turn all this stuff off and spend time looking in their eyes, talking, walking, having life experiences, teaching them about things. My grandfather, I tell him the book, taught me all about the stock market, and believe me, he's passed away, years ago, and if he could come back now and see what I did with those lessons, I think he'd be very proud, because I'll never forget all those times with him. And you know what? He didn't have a smartphone, and he wasn't distracted, and he wasn't thinking about other things, or let's watch TV together. We went on rides. We did we learned about all kinds of things together. He had a farm. We did all this stuff in the farm, and this was times that I'll never forget. And look what became of it.
yeah,
So the number one
yeah.
thing you can do with your kids, you don't have to be really smart to have kids. Okay, all you have to do is be present, and people don't understand that. You all the time. My father was a furniture salesman. He was a great guy, but it's not like he had any experience in the businesses that I'm in, but he gave me time, okay, and attention, and that's what you can do. And it sounds so small, but try it this weekend, and I think you'll like the results.
That is beautiful, and I'm sure your grandfather would be very proud of you, EB. I think I'm going to leave it on that note. I can't top that. Thank you so much, always, for coming on. EB Tucker, author of Why Gold, Why Now. Thanks, EB.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks so much for watching this edition of Stansberry Research. We'll have more coming your way. And don't forget to get premier content at danielacambone.com. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.
Opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the contributor and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Stansberry Research, its parent company, or affiliates.